And you see, it's just that easy. There's something taken for granted while playing Don't Starve, and that is your location. Not basing or anything, just where the player is at any point in time. See, as you play the game, you'll notice that things only ever end up happening around the player. Creatures will spawn, trees will grow, and fights will happen. But once the player gets away, all action stops. The game only loads what is necessary to function around the player. A lot of games do this, and many times the player doesn't even notice. This is mainly done for optimization, and game creators do this to fit more game on a limited amount of space, and to also maximize how much computing power is needed to play the game. For Don't Starve, the game only loads the surrounding 17 turf tiles around the player. This range is good enough for players since they normally would only ever see around 10 turfs maximum. The 17 turf radius though is only for loading objects in. If you want to unload an object, the player has to get 20 turfs away to truly unload it. This means there is a mini buffer zone where you can have objects that are unloaded interact with objects that are loaded. So like if you have a monster meat that is unloaded and a pig that is loaded, the pig can go eat the monster meat that is unloaded. The same for hostile creatures that are unloaded. The pig will become aggressive and kill the creatures while they are unloaded. Everything that is loaded and unloaded counts as either awake or asleep. At least that's within the game's code. You can actually see this in game if you press backspace, and if you look at the top left corner, you'll see how many entities are asleep and are awake. This number changes consistently. It doesn't really serve much, but it's cool to look at. Loading and unloading is very interesting because the game remembers things that the game is doing. Like if creatures are fighting, they will continue to do so. Anything that has a timer will continue to count down. Things like fires, plants, trees, or cooking are things that are on a timer. These objects will continue to work as normal while unloaded. Fires will still burn if an object was smoldering because smoldering is just another timer. Trees and plants will still go through their cycles, and they just won't update until the player loads them in. Fire is one of the things you should be careful of though, because even if an object is protected by a flingo, the fire is able to still burn things if the burnable object was unloaded while on fire or smoldering. However, trees are different with this. Trees, if they are unloaded while smoldering, will extinguish themselves when they are loaded. However, if a tree is on fire while it was unloaded, it will immediately become a charred tree upon loading again. This is a good way to stop forest fires if one started happening. Next are creatures. Everything that happens to a creature is remembered by the game. If you have them as followers, they will teleport close to you once they are unloaded. If they are not followers, they will just unload naturally and stay where they were unloaded. An interesting thing you won't ever see is when a full moon happens, the next time that a pig is loaded, it will be transforming from a werepig back into a pig. How objects load in also matter. You may know that statues count as walls when the player has everything loaded in. However, when everything unloads, creatures are able to bypass this pseudo wall, because it does not have collision. Regular walls do keep collision while unloaded though. This is why you should not make pens out of nothing but statues. The moon base is also another interesting thing that has some properties when it unloads. The trial actually progresses and spawns in werepigs and hounds even when unloaded. However, for some reason you're never able to fully protect an unloaded moon base. You can have 100 walls on each side of the moon base, but there is a strange thing that will destroy a line to the moon base and break it. The walls are destroyed completely too, almost like it was hammered. Nothing from moon base hammers, so what's going on here? I really hope a developer explains this because I want to know how this happens. In addition, some entities will continue to work while unloaded as well, like how bee boxes go into a passive farm mode, generating 1 honey a day while unloaded, and how anemones still attack creatures while unloaded. Certain creatures will also disappear when they're unloaded. Frogs from a frog rain is the most common one you'll see. Other big bosses will also disappear when they become unloaded. You can kind of get them started like with Dragonfly and Bee Queen, however they will quickly despawn. You can see how Bee Queen's honey trail is still shown, and when she is despawned, it's gone. This happens with Dragonfly as well. The pigman will just stop attacking when she despawns. The same with Toadstool and Fuel Weaver. They will exist for a moment and will despawn. Crab King, however, will pretend that things are happening and let you sit there for 40 minutes realizing that nothing actually happens. This one was really funny because the bees still attack, but they're not really doing anything. Other creatures have specific criteria they need to meet before they disappear. Deerclops, for instance, does not disappear while unloading until he has killed a few creatures or broken at least 5 structures. But there are a few big bosses that don't despawn, those being the seasonal bosses and the Celestial Champion. The most important being the Celestial Champion. Even though he does not despawn, Celestial Champion does regen HP while unloaded. Each phase heals a different amount, and it's based on the health that the phase has, and also the max health of the phase. Phase 1 has just a regen of 4.16 HP a second while unloaded. Phase 2 will heal 7.3 HP per second, while also potentially reaching a max health of 20,000. Phase 3 will heal 8.85 HP a second, and can heal up to a max of 22,500 HP. However, if you are able to do more damage than the regen, you can kill the champion. The champion is one of the few major bosses that can be killed off screen, and enemies sadly don't work here because they are too slow. Plus, the champion in phase 3 is considered to be flying, so they won't be able to hit it. But to counter this, there is a fun method I like to do, because it takes advantage of the 3 turf buffer zone for loading and unloading. You can actually set this up pretty easily for each of the phases. The most consistent way of exploiting this was with bunnymen or pigmen. I tried this with bees before, but because bees have such a small attack radius, the bees will just crowd around the champion and miss. They did this so often the champion ended up out healing them, but 3 pig houses or 2 bunnymen are enough to take out each phase of the fight. The reason why this is possible is because champion can be frozen. You can freeze the champion and prepare your setup. I like to use either pigmen or bunnymen based on the time of day it is. During dusk, the pigmen will stay in their houses, and during the day, bunnymen will stay in their houses. So that way you can set them up and they won't come out and start attacking until the frozen champion is set. From there, you just mark off 20 turfs away from the central turf that the champion is on to unload the champion. When he is unloaded from the 20 turfs, you can walk back 3 turfs to allow for the mobs to fight the champion. If you don't move back, the mobs will end up unloading like the champion, and from there you just wait and repeat. Each phase of the champion can be done like this, but you just gotta be careful not to die while freezing the champion. Unfortunately, you can't do this with most of the other bosses just because they unload, but this is probably still the easiest way to kill this boss if you're really having trouble with him. There's not much other to loading other than a few things I already mentioned. I hope this helps you understand the game a bit more. Until next time, this has been Tara, and take care. They did this so often. So often? What is that?